A cocky MMA fighter storms into an elderly martial arts instructor's dojo with cameras rolling, mocking the 72-year-old teacher's fake movie fighting and demanding he step into the cage. The punk live streams his harassment to thousands of viewers, calling the old man a coward while his girlfriend films every humiliating moment. But this isn't just any aging instructor being bullied. This is Steven Seagal himself. The fighter has no idea he just challenged a man who spent 5 decades perfecting the art of using an opponent's own force to destroy them. While the bully flexes for his social media followers, the Aikido master accepts the challenge with deadly calm, knowing this young fool is about to learn why legends never fade. The fighter's crew keeps streaming, thinking they're about to witness an old man's public humiliation, but they're actually broadcasting their champion's career-ending mistake. What happens when modern arrogance meets ancient wisdom in a steel cage? Will the fighter survive his first encounter with real martial arts mastery? What happened next would haunt the MMA world forever. Before we jump back and tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun cast long shadows across the hardwood floor of Mountain Spirit Martial Arts as Steven Seagal adjusted Eddie Kowalski's wrist position for the third time. The 68-year-old Vietnam veteran's prosthetic left hand made certain Aikido techniques challenging, but Seagal had learned patience through 4 decades of teaching. "Remember, Eddie," Seagal said softly, his voice carrying the authority of experience. "Aikido works with the body you have, not against it. Feel the energy, don't fight it." Eddie nodded, his wire-rimmed glasses catching the light as he attempted the basic wrist escape again. Around them, 7 other students, all over 60, practiced their forms with the deliberate movements of people who understood that speed came second to precision. Dorothy Fleming, 71 and recently widowed, worked through her breathing exercises in the corner. She'd moved to Scottsdale 6 months ago for a fresh start, and these morning classes had become her anchor. The silver-haired former librarian moved with surprising grace for someone who'd never done martial arts before. Her husband's death. "Excellent, Dorothy," called Maria Santos from across the room. Seagal's assistant instructor, a former Army medic with short black hair and sharp brown eyes, helped adjust another student's stance. At 45, Maria brought military precision to the dojo's gentle philosophy. Seagal watched his students with quiet satisfaction. This wasn't about creating fighters. It was about rebuilding confidence, finding community, and proving that strength had nothing to do with age. Each person here had come seeking something different. Eddie wanted to maintain his physical capabilities despite his prosthetic hand. Dorothy needed to feel capable of protecting herself. Others simply craved the peace that came with focused movement. "Let's close with meditation," Seagal announced as the hour neared its end. The class formed a circle, sitting in comfortable silence as he led them through breathing exercises his own master had taught him decades ago. In Japan, AS students began filing out, exchanging quiet conversations about grandchildren and weekend plans. Maria approached Seagal. "Steven," she said, keeping her voice low, "I've noticed something. Black SUV across the street. Same one's been there 3 days running." Seagal glanced toward the window, spotting the vehicle parked under the shade of a mesquite tree. As if sensing his attention, the SUV's engine started and it pulled away from the curb. "Probably nothing," he said, but something in his gut suggested otherwise. Before Seagal could lock the front door, it burst open with enough force to rattle the windows. Brock Kellerman strode in like he owned the place, his muscled frame filling the doorway. Behind him came a young woman with auburn hair and a man carrying professional camera equipment. "Steven Seagal." Kellerman's voice boomed through the quiet dojo. At 28, he possessed the kind of aggressive confidence that came from too many easy victories. Sleeve tattoos covered both arms, and his designer athletic wear screamed for attention. "I'm Brock Kellerman, and I'm here to make you an offer you can't refuse." The cameraman was already recording, a red light blinking as Kellerman positioned himself for maximum dramatic effect. His phone showed a live stream, with viewers rapidly climbing past 300. "I don't do interviews," Seagal replied calmly. But Kellerman wasn't listening. "This is Ashley Morrison, my girlfriend." Kellerman gestured to the auburn-haired woman, who offered a weak smile. "We're putting together something special, Legends versus New Blood. Real fighters testing movie. Fighting. Maria stepped forward protectively, but Seagal's subtle hand gesture kept her in place. He'd dealt with challengers before, though none quite this brash. I appreciate the offer, but I don't fight for entertainment anymore, Seagal said. I teach. For self-improvement. There's a difference. Kellerman's laugh was sharp and mocking. Self-improvement? You mean teaching these old folks how to pretend they're tough? His voice rose for the camera. Come on, Steven. Everyone knows your movie fighting was fake. Why not prove you've got something real? The stream comments were lighting up, encouraging Kellerman to push harder. Ashley shifted uncomfortably, her green eyes darting between the two men. My students learn what they need to learn, Seagal replied, his tone remaining level despite the provocation. Violence isn't entertainment. Violence. Kellerman scoffed. I'm talking about an exhibition. Unless you're scared of a real fighter. The cameraman panned across the dojo, capturing the traditional weapons displays and the photos of past students. Something about the methodical way he recorded bothered Maria. This felt less like spontaneous challenge and more like reconnaissance. Kellerman pulled out a business card, placing it on the reception desk with theatrical flair. You've got one. Week to decide, old man. Accept my challenge, or everyone's going to know Steven Seagal is afraid of real fighting. As they turned to leave, Ashley glanced back with an expression that might have been apologetic. The door slammed behind them, leaving the dojo in sudden quiet. That was planned, Maria said immediately, checking the locks. Everything about it. Seagal picked up the business card, noting the expensive printing and professional design. Through the window, he watched Kellerman's group climb into the same black SUV that had been watching the dojo. Seagal's phone buzzed insistently from the kitchen counter as he prepared a simple dinner of grilled vegetables and rice. The notifications had started an hour ago and showed no signs of stopping. When Maria's name appeared on the caller ID, he knew the situation had escalated. Steven, you need to see this. Maria's voice was tight with anger. The video already has 50,000 views. He opened his laptop reluctantly, watching as Kellerman's edited footage played out like a bad movie trailer. The clever editing made Seagal's calm responses look like nervous stammering, his measured tone appearing hesitant rather than wise. Comments flooded the screen faster than he could read them, most mocking his age and questioning his legitimacy. Hashtag #OldManAfraid was already trending in Phoenix. His phone rang again. Eddie this time, his voice shaking with fury. Sensei, this is bullshit. They made you look like a coward, and they're talking about our dojo like we're a joke. Dorothy's crying because her grandkids saw this garbage online. Before Seagal could respond, another call came through. Dorothy's voice was small and shaky. Steven, I'm so sorry. My daughter called from Ohio. She's worried about me training with someone who might be. She used the word fake. I told her she was wrong, but the calls continued through the evening. 3 students formally canceled their memberships via email, citing safety concerns and reputation issues. Local MMA gyms were sharing the video, with owners offering to teach the old man real fighting. In posts that attracted hundreds of likes, Seagal closed the laptop and stepped onto his small patio, where the desert evening provided its usual peace. But even here, he could hear a car driving slowly past his house. Once, twice, 3 times. The engine sound was familiar, the same SUV from the dojo. Inside, his phone continued buzzing with notifications. News outlets were picking up the story, framing it as has-been action star challenged by real fighter. The local MMA community was treating it like Christmas morning, finally having their chance to prove movie fighting was worthless. But what bothered Seagal most wasn't the mockery of his reputation, it was the collateral damage. Dorothy had found courage in those morning classes, rebuilding her confidence after her husband's death. Eddie had discovered that his prosthetic hand didn't define his capabilities. Now they were all being painted as fools following a fraud that he thought of his master's words. A true teacher's responsibility extends beyond the dojo walls. When you accept students, you accept the duty to protect what they've built within themselves. The car made another slow pass. Through his window, Seagal could see the SUV's occupants clearly now. Kellerman in the passenger seat, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing animatedly as he spoke. This wasn't just about a challenge anymore. This was about destroying everything he'd built in Scottsdale, piece by piece. The local news van arrived before Seagal opened the dojo Tuesday morning. Reporter Janet Cruz stood on the sidewalk with a cameraman, interviewing random passersby about the viral video that's dividing the martial arts community. Most people hadn't seen it, but that didn't stop them from offering opinions about old-fashioned fighting versus modern techniques. Inside, only Eddie and Dorothy sat waiting. In the empty dojo, both looked smaller than usual, the confident posture they developed over months of training replaced by uncertain shoulders and downcast eyes. "I'm still here, Sensei," Eddie said firmly, but his usual spark was dimmed. "Though my VA group thinks I should find a different instructor. They're saying you might not be the real deal." Dorothy clutched her purse tightly. "My daughter called 3 times last night. She wants me to move back to Ohio, says I'm making poor decisions out here." Her voice cracked slightly. "She used to be proud that I was learning to protect myself." Maria arrived carrying coffee and a grim expression. "It's getting worse," she announced. "City Council member Roger Vance called about our business license. Wants to review our insurance and safety protocols. Funny thing, his property records show he owns the building next to Kellerman's gym." As they attempted to hold a normal class, Seagal's phone rang constantly. 3 more students called to cancel, citing pressure from family members who'd seen the video. The Aikido Federation was looking into Seagal's teaching credentials after receiving concerned inquiries. Local martial arts supply stores were distancing themselves from the dojo. "This isn't about you anymore," Maria said quietly. After Dorothy excused herself to the bathroom, probably to cry privately. "They're systematically destroying everything we've built here. The students, the community trust, even our legal standing." Eddie nodded grimly. "It's like psychological warfare. They're not just attacking you, they're attacking everyone who believes in what you teach." Through the window, Seagal watched Dorothy emerge from the bathroom, her eyes red but her chin raised in defiant dignity. She'd lost her husband, moved across the country alone, and found strength in this place. Now strangers on the internet were calling her foolish for believing in something that had genuinely helped her heal. "Sensei," Eddie's voice was gentle. "What are you thinking?" Seagal looked at the photos lining the dojo walls, students who'd earned their black belts, group pictures from testing ceremonies, elderly practitioners demonstrating techniques with pride and precision. Each image represented someone who'd discovered they were stronger than they knew. "I'm thinking," he said slowly, "that sometimes protecting what matters means accepting a fight you don't want." Maria's eyebrows rose. "You're seriously considering this?" "I'm considering that Kellerman picked the wrong target," Seagal replied. "But more importantly, he picked the wrong community to threaten." Outside, the news van was packing up, having gotten enough footage of the controversial dojo for their evening report. But Seagal was no longer thinking about reputation or pride. He was thinking about Dorothy's tears and Eddie's dimmed confidence, and the systematic destruction of a place where people had learned to believe in themselves again. The desert cemetery was quiet except for the whisper of wind through mesquite trees. Seagal knelt beside his master's grave, placing fresh white chrysanthemums on the weathered headstone that read, "Hiroshi Tanaka, 1935 to 2020, beloved teacher." "I need your guidance, Sensei," he said softly, settling cross-legged on the grass. The familiar position brought memories flooding back, countless hours spent in meditation with the old Japanese master who'd taught him that Aikido was about protecting life, not taking it. He remembered their last conversation before Tanaka's death. The old man had been frail, but his eyes remained sharp as obsidian. "Stephen Cohen," he'd whispered, "a master's greatest test is not defeating enemies, but protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Sometimes the sword must be drawn not to cut, but to shield." The weight of responsibility settled on Seagal's shoulders like a familiar burden. Dorothy's tears, Eddie's wounded pride, the systematic dismantling of everything they'd built together. It all traced back to his refusal to engage with Kellerman's challenge. His desire for peace had made his students vulnerable. Tanaka had faced a similar choice in 1960s Japan, when Yakuza threatened his dojo to force him into underground fighting. The master had accepted one fight, not for honor or money, but to protect his students from harassment. He'd won decisively, and the Yakuza never returned. "I understand now," Seagal murmured to the headstone. "This isn't about my pride. It's about their safety." He pulled out his phone and dialed Maria's number. When she answered, He could hear the dojo's afternoon class in the background, the sound of people finding strength in ancient movements. Maria, call Kellerman. Tell him. I accept his challenge. Stephen, are you sure? Your blood pressure, your arthritis. I'm sure. But I need you to help me prepare. Not to win a fight, but to end a threat. What's the real plan here? Seagal looked at his master's grave one final time. To remind people that some things are worth fighting for, and that wisdom doesn't retire just because the body ages. He stood slowly, joints protesting but spirit resolute. The drive back to town felt different, no longer a retreat, but an advance toward a battle he should have accepted from the beginning. Apex MMA Training Center buzzed with controlled chaos when Seagal's group arrived for the contract signing. News vans lined the parking lot, while social media influencers live-streamed from every angle. Kellerman had turned what should have been a simple meeting into a circus. Inside, the gym reeked of sweat and testosterone. Fighters pounded heavy bags with unusual intensity, their movements sharp but somehow unnatural. Seagal noticed several had the telltale signs of enhancement: excessive sweating, dilated pupils, and muscle definition that seemed almost cartoonish. Stephen fucking Seagal. Kellerman's voice boomed as cameras focused on the entrance. I knew you'd come around. Can't resist the spotlight. Can you? The contract sat on a folding table surrounded by media equipment. As Seagal read the terms carefully, Kellerman posed for photos and delivered sound bites about exposing fake martial arts. The fight was scheduled for Friday night at this very gym. Exhibition rules, no purse, supposedly just for honor. But Seagal's attention wasn't on Kellerman's theatrics. Through a glass office window, he observed a well-dressed older man watching the proceedings with predatory interest. Vincent Torino, though Seagal didn't know the name yet, carried himself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to control. Ashley remained in the background, her green eyes tracking everything but saying nothing. When their gazes met, briefly, Seagal caught something unexpected, not the excitement of a girlfriend supporting her man, but the watchful tension of someone gathering intelligence. You sure about this, old-timer? Kellerman taunted while signing his copy. I've been training with the best supplement science can offer. You're gonna get hurt. Everyone gets hurt eventually, Seagal replied calmly. The question is whether it means something. Maria studied the gym's layout with military precision, noting exits, camera positions, and the expensive surveillance equipment that seemed excessive for a simple training facility. This place felt more like a headquarters than a neighborhood. GYM.as they prepared to leave. Ashley followed them into the parking lot, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Make sure he's careful, she told Maria quietly. Brock isn't the same person he was 6 months ago. Something's changed him, and I don't think it's just confidence. Before Maria could respond, Kellerman's voice cut through the evening air. Ashley, get back in here. She hurried away, but not before Seagal caught the fear in her eyes. Not fear of him or the upcoming fight, but fear of the man she was supposedly supporting. Dawn painted the dojo walls golden as Seagal began his modified training regimen. Maria had spent the night researching Kellerman's fighting style through online footage. Aggressive striking with decent wrestling, but poor defensive instincts and a tendency to overcommit to power shots. Your advantages are experience and technique, Maria explained, pulling up fight videos on her tablet. His advantages are youth, strength, and whatever he's been taking to enhance both. Seagal worked through kata slowly, feeling each joint's limitations. Arthritis made certain grips painful. Old back injuries limited his flexibility, but his timing remained sharp as a blade. 40 years of practice had ingrained the movements so deeply they felt more natural than walking. Eddie arrived early to help with training, playing the role of aggressive attacker in practice drills. Despite his prosthetic hand, the old veteran threw convincing haymakers that Seagal redirected with minimal effort. Ireme, Seagal explained as he demonstrated entering movement. Don't retreat from the attack, step into it, beside it, redirect. The energy. Let him defeat himself. Dorothy and 3 other returning students watched from the sidelines, their confidence slowly rebuilding as they witnessed their teacher's fluid control. Even at 72, Seagal moved with the kind of efficiency that made violence look like dance. I've been thinking, Maria said during a water break. Kellerman's improvement over the past 6 months isn't just dramatic. It's medically suspicious. Muscle mass doesn't increase that fast naturally. She showed Seagal photos from Kellerman's social media timeline. 6 months ago, he'd been lean but ordinary. Recent pictures showed someone who'd gained 20 pounds of muscle while maintaining the same body fat percentage. Performance enhancers? Eddie asked. More than that, Maria replied. I reached out to some contacts. There's rumors about a new research program offering experimental supplements to fighters. Several guys have been hospitalized with heart problems after training at gyms connected to this program. Seagal absorbed this information while continuing his movements. The physical preparation was important, but understanding his opponent's mental state would be crucial. Enhanced fighters often possessed increased aggression along with physical improvements, making them dangerous but predictable. If he's chemically enhanced, he'll be stronger and faster than normal, Seagal observed. But chemicals can improve judgment or timing. They usually make fighters more reckless. So the plan is to let him exhaust himself. The plan, Seagal said, executing a perfect Irimi nage on empty air, is to protect everyone in that room from seeing unnecessary violence, including Kellerman. Friday evening arrived with unseasonable desert heat. Apex MMA overflowed with 500 spectators, mostly young men eager to watch their hero demolish an aging movie star. Hostile chants filled the air as Seagal's small group pushed through the crowd toward the makeshift dressing area. Dorothy clutched a hand-painted sign reading, "Respect your elders," while Eddie wore his Marine Corps veteran cap with quiet pride. They looked tiny and out of place among the aggressive crowd, but their presence grounded Seagal's purpose. Pre-fight medical checks revealed elevated blood pressure, 180/95. The ringside doctor, a nervous young man clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation, checked it twice before reluctantly clearing Seagal to compete. You sure about this? The doctor asked quietly. This isn't a sanctioned event. If something goes wrong, something already went wrong, Seagal replied. I'm here to fix it. Kellerman entered to thunderous music and pyrotechnics, flexing and posturing for the cameras. His pupils were dilated, sweat already beading despite the air conditioning, and his muscle definition looked almost unnatural under the lights. Whatever he'd taken was coursing through his system. Seagal entered in traditional black GI, moving with the unhurried precision of water flowing downhill. The crowd's hostility washed over him without effect. He'd faced worse audiences in his Hollywood days. In the cage, referee explained exhibition rules. 3 3-minute rounds could be stopped for safety concerns. Kellerman immediately began trash-talking and chest-thumping, playing to his audience. The bell rang. Kellerman charged forward like a bull, throwing wild haymakers with enhanced strength behind them. Seagal remained centered, moving minimally, his feet tracing small circles as attacks whistled past his face. When Kellerman overcommit to a massive right cross, Seagal stepped beside him, using perfect Irimi timing. His hands barely touched Kellerman's extended arm, but the guidance was precise, redirecting the fighter's own momentum in a smooth arc that sent him headfirst into the cage wall. The impact was sharp and final. Kellerman dropped unconscious. In 27 seconds, stunned silence filled the arena as medics rushed forward. Ashley sprinted into the cage, kneeling beside Kellerman's motionless form, tears streaming down her face. Thank God, she whispered, checking his pulse with shaking hands. She looked up at Seagal with desperate gratitude. If you hadn't stopped him when you did, those pills he's been taking could have killed him tonight. Through the office window, Vincent Torino watched with darkening expression, already calculating his next move. The fluorescent lights of Scottsdale General's waiting room cast everything in harsh relief as Seagal sat with Maria and Eddie 2 hours after the fight. Ashley paced near the vending machines, her earlier composure cracked like broken glass. Dr. Patricia Hernandez emerged from the trauma bay, pulling off latex gloves with clinical efficiency. Mr. Kellerman has a severe concussion complicated by unknown substances in his bloodstream. We're running toxicology, but preliminary results show synthetic compounds I've never seen before. Detective Ray Morrison, no relation to Ashley, arrived with a notebook and tired eyes. He'd worked enough drug cases to recognize the signs. Performance enhancers? Beyond that, Dr. Hernandez replied. Whatever he took affects neural pathways and cardiovascular function. We're seeing heart arrhythmia and brain swelling. If this fight had continued much longer, Ashley broke down completely. I tried to warn him. He started taking pills 6 months ago from someone at the gym. Said they were legal supplements, part of a research program. But he changed, became aggressive, paranoid, obsessed with proving himself. Seagal surprised everyone by asking to see Kellerman once he was stable. The young fighter lay unconscious, monitors beeping steadily, looking smaller and more vulnerable than his enhanced physique suggested. I know you were trying to prove something, Seagal said quietly to the sleeping form. But this isn't the way. When you wake up, we'll talk. Ashley watched from the doorway. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. As Seagal left the room, she approached hesitantly. He's not a bad person, she whispered. 6 months ago, Brock was struggling, his career failing. Then Vincent started talking to him about opportunities, special training programs. Everything changed after that. Vincent. Fear flickered across her features. Vincent Torino. He runs programs for fighters. I'm scared of what might happen when he finds out Brock can't fight anymore. Vincent doesn't like damaged merchandise. Her words carried weight beyond their obvious meaning. Maria caught the implication immediately. This wasn't about one enhanced fighter or even one gym. This was about something much larger and more dangerous. Outside, the black SUV sat in the hospital parking lot, waiting. The coffee shop near the hospital was nearly empty at 7 a.m. when Ashley slid into the booth across from Seagal and Maria. She'd called them an hour earlier, voice shaking, saying she had information they needed to hear. I've been gathering evidence for 8 months, she began without preamble, pulling out her phone with trembling hands. Vincent Torino isn't just supplying performance enhancers. He's running experimental drug trials on fighters without their knowledge. The photos she showed were devastating. Fighters before and after joining Torino's performance program. Their transformations dramatic but somehow wrong. Medical records showing hospitalization for heart problems, seizures, and unexplained deaths. Financial documents revealing massive betting operations connected to underground fights. My brother Danny was one of the first test subjects, Ashley continued, her voice barely above a whisper. He died 18 months ago from what they called exercise-induced cardiac arrest. But I found his blood work, the same synthetic compounds they found in Brock. Maria leaned forward, her military training recognizing an intelligence briefing. How extensive is this operation? 5 states, dozens of gyms. Torino identifies struggling fighters, offers them hope through his research program. They sign waivers thinking they're getting legal supplements, but they're actually being drugged with untested compounds. Once they're enhanced and addicted, he forces them into underground fights where wealthy clients bet millions. Seagal studied the photos of young fighters, kids really desperate enough to risk everything for a chance at success. How many have died? 3 that I can prove. Probably more. Ashley's hands shook as she pulled out a flash drive. This contains everything: financial records, medical files, videos of the underground fights. I was going to give it to the FBI, but Vincent has connections everywhere. Judges, cops, politicians, people who owe him favors or fear him. The flash drive felt heavy in Seagal's palm, weighted with the lives it represented. Why are you trusting us with this? Maria asked. Ashley's laugh was bitter. Because you're the first people I've met who can't be bought, intimidated, or corrupted. When you fought Brock, you could have seriously hurt him, ended his career permanently. Instead, you protected him from himself. As they prepared to leave, Maria noticed the black SUV parked across the street, engine running. They've been following you, she told Ashley. I know. That's why I need people Vincent can't control. Ashley stood, fear and determination warring in her green eyes. He's planning something big, using last night's publicity. If we don't stop him soon, a lot more fighters are going to die. The children's karate class at Mountain Spirit Dojo was Seagal's favorite part of Tuesday afternoons. 8 kids between ages 6 and 10 worked through basic forms, their serious expressions comically intense as they tried to remember the sequences. The front door opened during meditation time. But instead of a parent arriving early for pickup, Vincent Torino entered with 2 men in expensive suits. The children sensed the shift in atmosphere immediately. Their chattering stopped as parents quickly gathered them toward the back exit. Mr. Seagal, Torino's voice carried quiet authority. As the dojo emptied, impressive performance Friday night. Very impressive indeed. Seagal remained seated in meditation position, though Maria moved protectively toward the weapons rack. Eddie, who'd been helping with the children's class, positioned himself near the emergency phone. Vincent Torino, the man continued, approaching. With predatory patience. I'm a business investor with interests in combat sports. Your demonstration against young Kellerman has created quite a buzz in certain circles. I don't perform for audiences anymore, Seagal replied calmly. Oh, but you do. Friday night proved that. And I have a proposition, an exclusive fighting circuit for discerning clients who appreciate legendary talent. Think of it as classical music for martial arts enthusiasts. The offer was couched in respectful terms, but the two men flanking Torino weren't there for conversation. They had the patient stillness of professional enforcers. I'm honored by the offer, but I'll decline. Torino's smile never wavered, but something predatory flickered behind his gray eyes. I understand hesitation. But before you decide, consider this. I know quite a bit about your students. Eddie Kowalski, 1247, Desert View Lane, receives his disability checks on the 3rd of each month. Dorothy Fleming's grandchildren attend Roosevelt Elementary in Columbus, Ohio. Maria Santos served 3 tours in Afghanistan before that unfortunate incident with Lieutenant Colonel Bradley. The threats were delivered like weather observations, casual and matter of fact. Eddie's jaw tightened, his prosthetic hand clenching unconsciously. You have 48 hours to reconsider, Torino continued. My clients are very eager to see more of your traditional techniques. I'd hate for anything to interrupt your teaching schedule. After they left, Maria revealed why she'd recognized Torino immediately. Captain Vincent Torino, court-martialed 10 years ago for running illegal gambling operations using soldiers as fighters. He served 2 years in military prison, but got early release through connections. What kind of connections? Eddie asked. The kind that let him continue operating. Just outside military jurisdiction. Maria's expression was grim. Stephen, this man destroys people for entertainment. We can't fight him alone. Through the window, they watched Torino's Mercedes pull away slowly, its occupants photographing the dojo and surrounding businesses. The war had officially begun. The evidence Ashley had provided painted a horrifying picture across Maria's laptop screen. Video footage showed underground fights where clearly drugged fighters brutally injured each other, while wealthy spectators cheered and placed bets worth millions of dollars. Seagal and Maria worked through the night, documenting the scope of Torino's operation. Financial records revealed a sophisticated money laundering scheme using legitimate gyms as fronts. Medical files showed a trail of hospitalizations and deaths that authorities had somehow missed or ignored. Look at this. Maria highlighted a spreadsheet. 3 fighters died in the past year. Michael Torres, age 22, cardiac arrest during training. James Washington, 24, seizure following exhibition match. Danny Morrison, 23, heart failure after underground fight. Each name represented a young life destroyed by Torino's experimentation. The fighters had been desperate kids from poor families, lured by promises of success and easy money. The betting operation is the real business, Seagal observed. The fights are just the vehicle. Wealthy clients don't just want to watch violence. They want to feel they're witnessing something exclusive, forbidden. Maria's military contacts had provided additional intelligence. Torino's network extended across Arizona, Nevada, California, Texas, and New Mexico. Local law enforcement was either corrupted or intimidated, while federal agencies lacked sufficient evidence for prosecution. We need to. Maria's analysis was interrupted by Eddie's panicked phone call. Sensei, Dorothy's missing. His voice cracked with fear. Her apartment manager found her door open, signs of struggle. There's a note on her kitchen table. They raced to Dorothy's apartment complex, where police were already taking statements. The note was brief and chilling. Mr. Seagal, if you want to see your students again, come to Warehouse 47 on Industrial Boulevard tomorrow at midnight. Come alone, or they get hurt. Detective Morrison was handling the case, but his expression suggested limited optimism. No witnesses, no surveillance footage. Professional job. As they stood in Dorothy's violated living space, overturned chairs, scattered books, her reading glasses broken on the floor, Seagal felt cold rage building in his chest. This gentlewoman had lost her husband, moved across the country for a fresh start, and found courage in his dojo. Now she was a pawn in Torino's game. "We call the FBI," Maria insisted. "This is kidnapping, and guarantee her death," Seagal replied quietly. "He has Eddie and Frank too, doesn't he?" Eddie's phone rang as if summoned. Frank Caruso's elderly voice was shaky but alive. "Steven, I'm okay. We're all okay for now. But don't." The line went dead. Seagal stared at the ransom note, knowing his next decision would determine whether his students lived or died. Seagal sat alone in his empty dojo the next morning, staring at the ransom note as sunrise painted the walls amber. The silence felt different now, not peaceful, but ominous. Every photo on the wall seemed to mock him with memories of students who'd trusted him to keep them safe. His phone rang at exactly 10 a.m. "Mr. Seagal." Torino's voice was businesslike, almost pleasant. "I trust you've considered my previous offer more seriously now. What do you want?" "Your participation in my underground tournament. For fighters, single elimination over 4 nights. Winner takes $500,000. Torino paused, letting the amount sink in. Of course, money isn't really the point here. Seagal closed his eyes, knowing he was walking into a trap but seeing no alternative. "And my students? Safe as long as you perform. This tournament will legitimize my operation. Having a Hollywood legend participate will attract international attention and betting. Think of yourself as the headliner for a very exclusive audience. I need proof they're alive. Of course, professional courtesy." The video arrived on his phone 5 minutes later. Dorothy, Eddie, and Frank sat in what appeared to be a concrete storage room, frightened but unharmed. Dorothy looked directly at the camera with the dignity that had carried her through her husband's death. "Steven, don't do this for us," she said firmly. "We're not worth risking your life." Eddie shouted over her. "Kick his ass, sensei. Show these punks what real fighting looks like." Before Frank could speak, the video cut off. Maria found Seagal still staring at his phone an hour later. "We have to call the FBI, Ray Morrison, someone with authority, and guarantee their deaths." Seagal stood slowly, feeling every one of his 72 years. Torino's not bluffing. He's killed before, and he'll kill again. So what's the plan? Seagal looked at the photos lining his dojo walls. Decades of students who'd found strength and confidence through martial arts. The plan is to remind Vincent Torino that some things can't be controlled through fear and money. And if you lose, then you make sure their story gets told. He began changing into his black GI, preparing for a war he'd never wanted but could no longer avoid. Warehouse 47 squatted in the industrial district like a concrete cancer, its windows painted black and parking lot empty except for a single streetlight. Seagal arrived at midnight as instructed, his truck's headlights cutting through desert darkness. Inside, he discovered a fully operational underground fight venue that would have impressed any casino. Professional octagon cage, stadium lighting, betting stations staffed by men in expensive suits, and medical facilities that looked more equipped than some hospitals. Over 200 wealthy spectators filled makeshift bleachers, politicians, business executives, celebrities trying to look anonymous behind designer sunglasses. "Welcome to the real show." Torino greeted him, resplendent in a tailored tuxedo. Much more civilized than that amateur hour at Kellerman's gym, wouldn't you agree? The other tournament fighters waited in a holding area, 3 men in their 20s and 30s, all showing the telltale signs of enhancement. Dilated pupils, excessive muscle definition, and the twitchy energy of predators pumped full of synthetic aggression. But it was the young fighter in the adjacent holding cell who caught Seagal's attention. Tommy Brennan, 19 years old with intelligent brown eyes and a separated left shoulder that he tried unsuccessfully to hide. "You don't look like you belong here," Seagal observed quietly. "Neither do you," Tommy replied with a bitter laugh. "But Vincent owns my debt now. Borrowed money for community college, couldn't pay it back. Now I fight or my little sister gets hurt." Through a small window, Seagal could see his students in a similar concrete room across a courtyard. Dorothy was teaching Eddie and Frank breathing exercises, maintaining her composure even in captivity. Her quiet strength reminded him why he was here. "First fights in 20 minutes, a guard announced. "You're up against the pit bull." Seagal spent the remaining time teaching Tommy basic centering techniques to manage pain and fear. Breathe from your center, not your chest. Fear makes the injury worse. Calm makes it manageable. Tommy absorbed the lesson desperately. How do you stay calm when everything's falling apart? You remember what you're protecting, Seagal replied, looking toward the window where Dorothy was visible, still helping her fellow captives maintain dignity in an undignified situation. And you trust that doing the right thing creates its own strength. The crowd's roar indicated the evening's entertainment was about to begin. Seagal stood, joints protesting but spirit resolute, and walked toward his first real fight in over a decade. The cage door clanged shut with metallic finality as Seagal faced Marcus Webb, known as the Pitbull. At 32, Webb was a mountain of chemically enhanced muscle, sweat already pouring despite the air conditioning. His pupils dilated to pinpoints that reflected the arena lights. "You're gonna die tonight, old man," Webb snarled, bouncing on his toes with manic energy. "I'm gonna break every bone in your ancient body." The wealthy crowd leaned forward in anticipation, many holding tablets showing live betting odds. Seagal noticed several faces he recognized from local politics and business. Respectable citizens enjoying forbidden entertainment. The bell rang. Webb charged like a rabid animal, throwing wild haymakers with enhanced strength that could have shattered concrete. But Seagal had spent 4 decades perfecting the art of not being where attacks landed. He moved minimally, feet tracing small circles, letting Webb's fists whistle harmlessly past his face. For 6 minutes, Webb unleashed everything he had, combinations that would have destroyed most fighters, takedown attempts powered by synthetic rage, desperate grappling that left him grasping air. Seagal remained centered, using Taino Henko to blend with each attack, redirecting the violent energy without absorbing it. The enhancement drugs that made Webb powerful also made him predictable. His movements became increasingly erratic as his body processed the chemicals, sweat streaming, heart rate spiking dangerously. When Webb finally stumbled from exhaustion and drug-induced disorientation, Seagal acted with surgical precision. A simple wrist control technique guided the collapsing fighter gently to the ground, applying just enough pressure to ensure submission without causing injury. Webb thrashed briefly, then went limp as medics rushed forward. His heart was racing irregularly, eyes rolled back, body convulsing from whatever cocktail Torino had fed him. "Is he alive?" someone in the crowd shouted. "Barely," the ringside doctor replied grimly, checking Webb's erratic pulse. As Webb was carried away on a stretcher. Tommy and other young fighters in the holding area stared at Seagal with newfound respect. He'd won without hurting his opponent, protecting Webb from the drugs that were killing him slowly. "How did you do that?" Tommy whispered through the cell bars. "Sometimes," Seagal replied, "the greatest victory is protecting your enemy from himself." In the VIP section, Torino watched with calculating eyes, already adjusting his plans for tomorrow night's semifinal. But 24 hours later, Seagal prepared for the tournament final in the same concrete, holding cell. His body ached from the previous night's fight, not from damage taken, but from the stress of maintaining perfect defensive movement for an extended period at his age. Tommy sat in the adjacent cell, his shoulder injury worsening despite the basic techniques Seagal had taught him. 3 other young fighters had been eliminated in brutal preliminary matches, all requiring medical attention. "Final fight tonight," a guard announced. "Special opponent waiting for you." When Seagal entered the cage, Brock Kellerman was waiting for him, looking healthy and aggressive with no trace of the concussion from a week ago. The crowd erupted in surprise and excitement. This was the rematch they'd wanted to see. "Surprise, old man," Kellerman grinned, flexing enhanced muscles under the lights. "Hospital stay was all theater. Had to make you think I was hurt so you'd let your guard down." Ashley appeared ringside, but her previous concern was gone, replaced by cold calculation. She wore expensive clothes and jewelry that hadn't been there before, clearly part of Torino's operation rather than an innocent girlfriend. "You played the compassionate master perfectly," Kellerman continued, "visiting me in the hospital, showing all that concern. Made it easy to manipulate you into this situation." The devastating revelation hit Seagal like a physical blow. Everything, the challenge, the hospital visit, Ashley's apparent distress, had been an elaborate setup designed to exploit his protective instincts. But Kellerman wasn't finished. This tournament is just the beginning. Vincent's been kidnapping martial arts instructors across the Southwest. Battle of the Old Masters. Monthly events where respected teachers fight each other for rich assholes entertainment. Horror washed over Seagal as the full scope became clear. This wasn't about him or even his students. Torino was systematically targeting elderly martial arts masters, using their students as leverage to force participation in gladiatorial combat. Win or lose tonight, you're trapped, Kellerman taunted. Beat me, and you face other kidnapped masters next month. Lose, and your students die anyway. Maria was escorted into the arena in restraints, captured during her rescue attempt. Torino's voice boomed over the speakers. Mr. Seagal, if this fight ends too quickly like your last one, Miss Santos dies. You need to provide entertainment value. The impossible choice: fight defensively and watch Maria die, or engage violently and risk serious injury at his age. While Kellerman was chemically enhanced as the bell rang, Seagal found himself taking real damage for the first time in decades, forced to absorb punishment while searching for a solution that would save everyone he cared about. The chapter ended with him being knocked down as the crowd cheered his suffering. Blood trickled from a cut above Seagal's left eye as he struggled to his feet, the metallic taste of defeat filling his mouth. Kellerman circled him like a shark sensing weakness, enhanced muscles rippling under the arena lights. Getting tired, old-timer? Kellerman taunted, throwing a vicious body shot that Seagal barely deflected. This is what real fighting looks like. The crowd's bloodlust was palpable, wealthy spectators on their feet, cheering each time Seagal absorbed punishment. In the VIP section, Torino watched with cold satisfaction as his plan unfolded perfectly. Between rounds, Tommy managed to whisper through the holding cell bars, "There are more downstairs. Other teachers like you. Master Chen, who teaches Kung Fu, Sensei Rodriguez from the karate school, Coach Murphy, who trains boxers. All got students being held hostage." Seagal's heart sank. The scope of Torino's operation was worse than he'd imagined. Systematic kidnapping and exploitation of respected martial arts instructors, forced to fight for the entertainment of degenerates while their students suffered. "How many?" Seagal asked quietly. "6 so far. All old guys who built something good, getting destroyed for money." In the hostage area, Dorothy maintained her dignity despite everything, teaching Eddie and Frank meditation breathing to help them stay calm. Her quiet strength in the face of terror reminded Seagal of his master's teachings about finding power and protecting others. But it was the young fighters watching from their cells that sparked his real inspiration. They'd been lured here with promises of success, drugged into compliance, forced to brutalize each other for Torino's profit. Their hollow eyes reflected the same hopelessness Seagal felt building in his chest. The bell rang for round 2. Kellerman charged forward with renewed aggression, landing a solid cross that staggered Seagal backward. The crowd erupted as their hero finally showed vulnerability. But as Seagal wiped blood from his mouth, something shifted in his expression. He was done thinking about winning or losing this fight. Done considering his own safety or reputation. That it was time to teach everyone in this warehouse what real martial arts mastery actually meant. The true battle was about to begin. Between the second and third rounds, Seagal sat in his corner battered but not broken. He closed his eyes and entered the meditative state that had sustained him through 40 years of training, drawing on reserves of strength that had nothing to do with muscle or bone. The memory came unbidden, his master Tanaka's voice during their final conversation. "Stephen Quinn, the body may weaken with age, but the spirit grows stronger. A true warrior's greatest weapon is not his hands, but his ability to inspire others to fight for what's right." Opening his eyes, Seagal looked beyond the cage to the young fighters in their holding cells. They watched him with desperate hope. These kids who'd been lured here with dreams of success only to become victims of systematic exploitation. Using hand signals based on traditional martial arts forms, Seagal began communicating with Tommy and the others. Subtle movements that looked like stretching to the guards but conveyed clear instructions to anyone with training. "Be ready, watch for the signal, trust each other." Tommy's eyes widened with understanding. He began passing the message to adjacent cells through whispered conversations and careful gestures. The young fighters started positioning themselves closer to their guards, muscles tensing with anticipation. The eye in the basement, Master Chen caught sight of Seagal's signals through a ventilation grate. The elderly kung fu instructor had been teaching for 50 years. He recognized the coordinated planning of someone preparing for battle. He began alerting the other captive masters through their own network of subtle communications. Even Maria, restrained but not defeated, noticed the shift in energy. Her military training recognized the signs of an operation about to launch. She started working more aggressively on her restraints, knowing whatever Seagal was planning would happen soon. The bell rang for the final round, but instead of despair, Seagal felt the familiar calm that came before decisive action. When Kellerman charged forward throwing another wild combination, Seagal didn't just defend, he began teaching. This is called entering, he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear, demonstrating ireme as he stepped into Kellerman's attack. You move toward the violence, not away from it. Use his own force against him. The young fighters stopped staring in defeat and started paying attention, recognizing the lesson happening before their eyes. Seagal gave the signal. A traditional Aikido bow performed in the middle of combat, and everything changed. The coordinated uprising began the instant Seagal completed his bow. Tommy and 6 other young fighters simultaneously attacked their guards using the basic techniques Seagal had taught them during captivity. The moves weren't perfect, but desperation and righteous anger made them effective. Maria broke free from restraints she'd been systematically loosening throughout the fight, immediately targeting the surveillance equipment with military precision. Sparks flew as expensive cameras and recording devices crashed to the concrete floor in the basement. Master Chun led the liberation of other captive instructors. At 74, the Kung Fu master moved like flowing water, his precise strikes disabling multiple opponents, while Sensei Rodriguez used powerful karate techniques to clear escape routes. Coach Murphy, despite being 71, combined with Eddie's prosthetic hand to deliver devastating boxing combinations that sent guards scrambling. The wealthy spectators panicked as chaos erupted throughout the warehouse. Men in $1,000 suits stumbled over each other rushing toward exits, their appetite for violence evaporating when it threatened to touch them personally. Amidst the general uprising, Seagal finally stopped holding back against Kellerman. Using classic Aikido ireme, he redirected Kellerman's charging attack into a powerful throw that sent him crashing through the cage door, enhanced body hitting concrete with bone-jarring impact. Dorothy and the other elderly hostages were freed by Tommy's group, the former librarian immediately taking charge of coordinating communications while Maria guided fighters to disable Torino's electronic jamming equipment. Everyone toward the main entrance. Dorothy commanded with surprising authority, her survival instincts honed by months of living alone after her husband's death. Stay together, help the injured. The different martial arts styles worked in perfect harmony. Chen's fluid kung fu covering Rodriguez's linear karate attacks, Murphy's boxing providing the heavy hitting, while Seagal's Aikido redirected the opponent's force back at them. Decades of training in different disciplines unified by common purpose. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as Maria's military contacts received her emergency calls. But Torino's voice suddenly boomed over the warehouse intercom system. Everyone stop, or I start executing hostages. The uprising halted as Torino appeared on an upper balcony, holding Ashley at gunpoint. Despite her betrayal, she was still a human being in immediate danger. That's right, Torino snarled. Back in your cages, or she dies first. Then I start with the old people. The standoff stretched taut as police sirens grew louder outside. Warehouse 47. Torino held Ashley on the concrete balcony overlooking the main floor, his pistol pressed against her temple, while 200 panicked spectators and dozens of fighters waited for someone to blink first. I want a helicopter and safe passage, Torino demanded, his voice echoing through the warehouse. Anyone moves, and I start with her, then work my way through every gray-haired fossil in this place. But Ashley surprised everyone by speaking. First, Vincent, it's over. Even if you kill me, you're finished. Shut up. Torino pressed the gun harder against her head. You were useful for gathering intelligence, but you're replaceable. No, I wasn't gathering intelligence for you. Ashley's voice carried across the silent warehouse. I was gathering evidence against you. My brother Danny was one of the 3 fighters who died from your experimental drugs. I've been planning this for 18 months. The revelation hit Torino like a physical blow. His carefully orchestrated operation had been infiltrated from the beginning by someone seeking justice, not profit. Ashley suddenly broke free from his grip, throwing a flash drive toward Maria before Torino could react. Everything's on there: financial records, medical files, videos of the underground fights, connections to organized crime. Torino shot her in the shoulder, the gunshot echoing through the warehouse like thunder. Ashley spun and fell, but the flash drive skittered across the concrete toward the main floor. FBI. Everyone down. Federal agents poured through multiple entrances, tactical gear gleaming under the arena lights. Maria had been coordinating with them since Chapter 10, and Ashley's evidence had provided grounds for federal warrants. The confrontation moved to Torino's office as he retreated, dragging his wounded hostage. Through bulletproof glass, he revealed his final gambit: explosives rigged throughout the warehouse. I'd rather burn it all down than let you take me. He snarled into a radio detonator. Seagal followed them up the stairs, knowing this had to end with personal confrontation. In the office, Torino made the classic mistake of monologuing instead of shooting immediately. You have no idea what you've destroyed, Torino raged. I was building an empire. Martial arts gladiators for the new century. As Torino raised his pistol, Seagal used perfect Mai, timing, and distance to close the gap. A classic deflection of the gun arm combined with a precise wrist strike caused the weapon to fly across the room. Simple joint control pinned Torino against his desk as bomb disposal experts rushed past the office door, their countdown timer showing 30 seconds remaining. It's over, Vincent, Seagal said quietly. Time to face what you've done. Maria kicked down Torino's office door just as the bomb disposal team disarmed the final explosive device with 8 seconds remaining. Behind her, FBI agents in tactical gear swept into the room where Seagal held Torino immobilized against the mahogany desk. Vincent Torino, you're under arrest for racketeering, kidnapping, drug trafficking, and murder, Agent Sarah Chin announced, reading rights while paramedics attended to Ashley's shoulder wound that Torino's face contorted with rage as federal agents secured him in restraints. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have connections from Vegas to Washington. This won't stick. Actually, it will, Agent Chin replied calmly. We've been building a case for 2 years. Ms. Morrison's evidence provided the final pieces. We needed financial records, medical documentation, video footage of the fights. Your entire network is being rolled up as we speak. As Torino was led away, still ranting about his vision for martial arts entertainment, Ashley struggled to sit up despite her gunshot wound. Maria helped apply pressure to the bleeding while paramedics prepared a stretcher. Why? Seagal asked her quietly. Why infiltrate his operation for so long? Danny was my baby brother, Ashley whispered, tears mixing with sweat on her face. 23 years old, just trying to make enough money from medical school. Torino's drugs gave him a heart attack during an underground fight. I spent months getting close to Kellerman to work my way into the organization. Her relationship with Kellerman had become genuinely complicated over time, she explained. Despite his arrogance, she'd seen glimpses of the insecure kid underneath the enhanced bravado. But her mission had always remained clear: bring down the man who'd killed her brother. The FBI couldn't touch him through normal channels, she continued as paramedics loaded her onto the stretcher. Too many corrupt contacts, too much money changing hands. I needed someone he couldn't buy or intimidate. Seagal understood. His reputation for integrity had made him the perfect catalyst for exposing Torino's operation. The underground tournament, the kidnapped students, even the public challenge at his dojo. Everything had been designed to force a confrontation that would bring federal attention. As Ashley was wheeled toward the ambulance, she grabbed Seagal's hand. Danny would have liked you. He believed martial arts should build people up, not tear them down. Through the warehouse's open doors, Seagal could see Tommy helping other young fighters give statements to federal agents. Master Chun, Sensei Rodriguez, and Coach Murphy were reuniting with their own rescued students. Dorothy sat with Eddie and Frank, all 3 looking shaken but unbroken. The nightmare was finally over. But the real work of healing was just beginning. In the warehouse's main area, Kellerman had recovered consciousness and sat against the damaged cage, his enhanced muscles already beginning to show the effects of withdrawal. When Seagal approached, the young fighter looked up with something that might have been shame. "One more time," Kellerman asked quietly, struggling to his feet. "Just us, no drugs, no cameras, no bullshit. I need to know who I really am without all the chemicals." Federal agents stepped forward to intervene, but Seagal raised a hand. "Give us a few minutes." This final confrontation was different from everything that had come before. Kellerman was no longer drug-enhanced, and Seagal was no longer holding back to protect others. It was a pure test of martial arts philosophy, aggression versus centeredness, ego versus wisdom. Kellerman fought with genuine skill this time, his natural wrestling ability evident without chemical enhancement clouding his judgment. But he also fought with desperation, trying to prove he was more than just Torino's enhanced puppet. Seagal used precise, controlled techniques that neutralized each attack without causing permanent damage. When Kellerman shot for a takedown, Seagal's sprawl was textbook perfect. When the younger man threw combinations, Aikido redirection sent the energy harmlessly past its target. After 5 minutes of genuine combat, Kellerman collapsed from exhaustion, his unenhanced body unable to maintain the pace he'd grown accustomed to. Seagal helped him sit up and offered him water from a plastic bottle. "I got involved with Vincent because I was desperate," Kellerman admitted between gasps. "My fighting career was failing, bills piling up, everyone telling me I wasn't good enough. He made me feel powerful." "Power built on chemicals isn't real power," Seagal replied. "Real strength comes from building others up, not tearing them down." Tommy approached hesitantly, his injured shoulder in a makeshift sling. "Mr. Kellerman, if you want to learn proper training methods, when you get out of prison, you could train at the dojo, if Sensei allows it." Seagal looked at the kid who'd been forced to fight with a separated shoulder, now offering help to someone who'd been part of his exploitation. "That's what real martial arts looks like," he told Kellerman. "Teaching, not destroying." Federal agents arrested Kellerman, but he walked with dignity rather than being dragged away. Ashley, despite her gunshot wound, provided testimony that helped reduce his charges since he'd been manipulated and chemically influenced. The warehouse was secured as a crime scene. The rescued fighters and hostages were processed by medical teams and federal investigators. The immediate crisis was over, but the deeper work of rebuilding trust and healing trauma was just beginning. Outside, dawn was breaking over the desert, painting the sky in shades of hope. 2 weeks later, Seagal sat beside Ashley's hospital bed at Scottsdale General, where she was recovering from her gunshot wound and cooperating fully with federal investigators. Her shoulder was healing well, but the emotional scars would take longer to fade. "I keep thinking about Danny," she said quietly, staring out the window at the desert mountains. "He wanted to be a pediatric surgeon. Said he'd seen enough kids hurt during his childhood in foster care, wanted to spend his life fixing them." Instead, Federal Agent Chun had provided updates on the investigation's scope. Torino's network spanned 5 states with dozens of gyms serving as recruitment centers. The evidence Ashley had gathered would likely put him away for 3 consecutive life sentences, while his corrupt contacts in law enforcement and politics were facing their own prosecutions. "Tommy visits every day," Ashley continued with a weak smile. "Brings me reports about the other fighters. Most are getting counseling and medical treatment to overcome their drug dependencies. Several have asked about learning traditional martial arts." The broader implications were staggering. Over 200 young fighters had been exploited through Torino's operation, many suffering permanent health damage from experimental enhancement drugs. The death toll would likely climb as investigators uncovered more victims, but there were positive developments too. Master Chun, Sensei Rodriguez, and Coach Murphy had all returned to their dojos with renewed appreciation for their calling. They'd formed a mutual support network to prevent future exploitation, sharing intelligence and coordinating security measures. Dorothy had become something of a local celebrity, giving interviews about community resilience and the importance of standing up to bullies regardless of age. Her quiet dignity during captivity had inspired other seniors throughout Arizona to take self-defense classes. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," Ashley said as Seagal prepared to leave. "The deception, putting you and your students at risk. Everyone deserves a chance to make things right." Seagal interrupted gently. The question is what you do with that chance. He left her with information about victim services and trauma counseling, plus Tommy's contact details. The kid had asked specifically to help Ashley navigate her recovery, understanding better than most what it meant to escape Torino's web of manipulation. Outside, the Arizona sun felt clean and honest after the warehouse's artificial lighting. 6 months later, Mountain Spirit Martial Arts buzzed with activity as the community gathered for the expansion ceremony. The original dojo space had been doubled in size, and a new sign read, Mountain Spirit Martial Arts Community Center, in both English and Spanish. Local news crews captured the ribbon cutting, but this time the coverage was respectful rather than sensational. The story had shifted from aging action star challenged by young fighter to community leader builds healing center after surviving organized crime. Tommy stood beside Seagal wearing an instructor's uniform, his separated shoulder fully healed and his confidence rebuilt through months of proper training. He'd become the dojo's specialist in teaching children, his own experience with exploitation making him uniquely qualified to spot troubled kids who needed guidance. Remember, power comes from helping others find their strength, Tommy told a group of 8-year-olds working on basic stances, not from hurting people. The ceremony showcased the positive changes that had emerged from the crisis. Several young fighters rescued from Torino's operation had joined the dojo, learning that martial arts could be about personal growth rather than domination. Dorothy's senior citizens self-defense program had become so popular they'd started a waiting list. Eddie taught specialized classes for military veterans dealing with physical disabilities, while Maria had been promoted to co-director and was developing trauma-informed martial arts curricula with local therapists, Master Chun, Sensei Rodriguez, and Coach Murphy had all established exchange programs with the expanded facility. Their different styles, kung fu, karate, boxing, and aikido, worked together in demonstration forms that emphasized harmony over conflict. Even Kellerman had contributed, writing a formal letter of apology from minimum security prison where he was serving a reduced sentence. He'd requested permission to train at the dojo after his release, acknowledging that his pursuit of dominance had nearly destroyed him. Ashley had started a foundation in her brother Danny's memory, working to expose exploitation in combat sports, while providing support for young athletes from disadvantaged backgrounds. The ceremony concluded with a group demonstration by all the instructors, different ages, styles, and backgrounds unified in movements that created rather than destroyed. As the crowd applauded, Seagal stood surrounded by students who'd found not just self-defense techniques, but genuine community. Dorothy's youngest granddaughter, visiting from Ohio, tugged on Seagal's GI. Grandpa Stephen, will you teach me to be strong like Grandma Dorothy? Seagal knelt to her level, smiling. I'll teach you to be strong like yourself. That's the only strength that matters. The story ended as it began, with teaching, patience, and the understanding that true martial arts mastery creates protectors, not destroyers. If you like the story, please watch another story on our channel and subscribe to the channel.